Welcome on the next session from our episodes called BIM for Manufacturers. On this episode, we will talk about the ETIM and ETIM-MC classification, of course, in the context of BIM. If you're not familiar with our BIM for Manufacturing sessions, I would definitely recommend you to check our site and navigate to the knowledge and the subsection webinars, where you can find the recordings from the previous session. The site is http://bimstreamer.com. And for those of you that are already familiar with our previous webinars, I still recommend you to check them out again, because we've just released a new recordings from our previous webinar that took place at the beginning of Feb, where together with Michał Ledziński, a head of BIM at Uponor, we were talking about the new BIM platform of Uponor, which currently supports over 30 countries and generates and automatically updates over 80,000 BIM and CAD files. So definitely I would recommend you to check that out if you're interested in the topic of BIM for manufacturers and manufacturing. But let's get back to today's session, where we will actually cover the I letter from the BIM acronym, which states from information. And who would be the best to talk about the information, if not the person that for the past several years was responsible for the ETIM and the BIM coordination within the Zender group, and he was dealing with the information processing and data management throughout of his career. I might say that the data management and data integration is part of his DNA. Ladies and gentlemen, Francois Geers. Hello, Francois.
Hello, Martin. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. And we wouldn't be special if we wouldn't share with you not only the knowledge, but the actual use case of utilization this knowledge. That's why, as usual, we invited to our session our technical expert and the project manager of the BIM Streamer project, Mr. Adam Konca. Hello, Adam. Okay.
Hello.
So, I think that we have some delay. Okay, so what would be the discussion? What would be the topic of?
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you.
What would be the topic of our today's webinar, our today's agenda? So at the very beginning, we will talk about the ETIM, why it was created, what was it for, what was the intention of the founders of ETIM, and what are the benefits of actually using it. Due to the fact that we're talking about the BIM for manufacturers and BIM for manufacturing, we will cover also the extension of ETIM, which called the ETIM-MC, which stays from modeling class. As promised, we will also show you not only the knowledge, but also the actual utilization of the knowledge in a form of a demo. At the very end, Francois will also give you some sort of a findings that we see when it comes to ETIM, because as you know, nothing is black and white. There is also a different shades, 50 shades of gray, as Francois once mentioned to me. And we would like to cover that within our last summary findings. And as usual, at the very end of the presentation, we are welcome all the questions from the audience. We would be happy to clarify that to you. Of course, after each and every chapter of this agenda, we will also try to do something like a follow-up to ask whether there are any questions on the way. And still, if you still have some questions for the specific slide, don't hesitate to just type them in. And if we will have some time between one slide and another, we will try to answer them as soon as possible. And now getting back to our agenda, what ETIM really is, why it was created, what are their benefits. Francois Geers.
Martin, again, thank you very much. Yes, thank you for introducing me in general. I have a rather data background in general. So ETIM and ETIM-MC BIM, I believe that fits perfectly in knowledge, let's say, or my experience. Nevertheless, hopefully you are familiar with Arnold Schwarzenegger being the Terminator. He already mentioned that years ago. I sense injuries. The data could be called pain. You can interpret that in several ways. The thing is, gathering all this data for ETIM and ETIM-MC might be very painful. On the other hand, lack of having this kind of data, I believe it is excruciating painful. It is even more painful. So hence I wanted to start with this picture, with this familiar sentence. By the way, just to be sure, I will always ask at the end of the chapter whether there are questions or not, but please feel free to, in the meantime, put some questions online in the chat. Then either me, myself, or Martje will pick it up at the end of the chapter. Why ETIM was created? In 1991, it started in the Netherlands. Hence the tiny little flag on the helmet from the Netherlands. The installers wanted to work in a different way. They wanted to share information with one another to make things a bit more efficient, let's say, to ensure that everybody's talking about the same product in the same way, and so on. 7 years later already, HVAC was introduced or added. ETIM, by the way, started this electro-technical information model. So in 1998, HVAC was added. In 2006, the complete supply chain was being added, and 2 years later, that resulted in an international working organization, let's say, I believe, of 5 or 6 countries, that they started working with that they saw the benefits of working in the standardized way with headquarters in Brussels. A year later, even the shipping industry was added. 2014, the whole building construction was added. That is actually where it is getting more and more interesting, in my opinion. And last but not least, a year ago, tools, hardware, and so on was also being added within the ETIM classes. As already stated, ETIM, the acronym, started as Electro-Technical Information Model. Well, that is certainly in this context not anymore. E stands for European Technical Information Modeling, because it was not only restricted in the Netherlands at all anymore. At the very moment, there are 21 organizations spread over around 21 countries participating in this whole ETIM international forum. And as you can see, also Northern America is part of it. So it is not even called European anymore. Maybe they should reconsider, go back to electro, or come with another nifty meaning for the letter E. I just read that Hungary is also going to be part soon. So there will be even 22 countries in the meantime sharing the same interest in ETIM. So that was a little bit of the back of the history and so on. The thing is, actually, what is more interesting is what ETIM actually is. ETIM is to standardize, to simplify data the way that one is working with another. So first you start with a product group. Product group will contain multiple product classes. A product class contains multiple product features, and those product features are built up in this way with 4 possibilities. Either you have alphanumeric, or you have a numeric value, a range of values, or logic. Logic meaning yes or no. I will explain that a little bit more with some context to make it hopefully a little bit clearer. In the product group itself, let's say that we go for lamps. It starts with EG. EG standing for ETIM group. There's a specific group mentioned for that, which is unique. Within the product classes, I'm being chosen for a compact fluorescent lamp, starting with EC, ETIM class. Within the ETIM class, as already mentioned, there are product features. And there we can, for instance, go for alphanumeric that it has a socket, starting with EF. EF standing for ETIM feature. Then we have numeric value. Then we like to know what is the lamp power of the specific lamp range, frequency in hertz, sorry. And logic, does it or does it not have an integrated twilight sensor? I cannot really see that now because of the cameras being in front of it. Nevertheless, alphanumeric, then theoretically you can get a pop-up with stating several possibilities that you can choose from. They chose for something starting with a B because, again, I cannot see the rest. Numeric, how much watt is this specific lamp? 15 watts in this specific case. We're talking about the range, so it can function between a hertz of 50 and 60. And does it have an integrated twilight sensor? Yes. So the way that ETIM is built up, and is in my opinion really brilliant, is to standardize and to simplify the data. So any kind of alphanumeric field that you're using, like the socket, in whatever context that is being used, and whatever ETIM class, it will never have a different name. It will always be the same. The same as with length, width, and height. Those features always have the same specific naming convention in the background. Doesn't matter what class you are working. The other good thing about this whole ETIM approach is all the countries that joined, they are also represented with their own language, of course. So I'm Dutch. I'm looking at it now here in English. I understand it, not a problem. But now I'm working in France. I have difficulties with Dutch. I have difficulties with English. Doesn't matter. The feature is the one value that is being communicated, basically. In the background, it is automatically being translated to the language of your finding, of whatever you prefer to read it in. So in this case, let's say French. And that is, in my opinion, really the strength. If you're only working locally, maybe it doesn't matter. But if you're working internationally, you're setting it up in your own language, you want to communicate that with the whole world, easy peasy. ETIM International Database is covering all of those topics.
Francois, if I may ask, you
Yes.
said that the ETIM is actually a matter of predefined attributes and a predefined set of value. Is that also the case, that we can somehow validate whether these values are correct? Would it help us to reduce the number of errors in our data sheets?
Well, to validate, yes, validation is of course a possibility, but the simplifying of the data is making things already rather easy to make less room, let's say, to make mistakes. If we're talking, yeah, you mentioned already 50 shades of gray. There might be 1,000 shades of gray, I don't know. And not being that familiar with all the color codings and so on, ETIM is covering that perfectly. They simply state gray, whether it's dark gray, light gray, or something in between or whatever, it is simply gray. So you're reducing the amount of errors that might occur in this very instance. Getting back to your question, because there is only a limited amount of values that you can choose from, except for the range or when you have a numeric field to fill in, that might be a bit challenging, of course. There you might make mistakes. But there are validation possibilities in the background that might help you then again to reduce the amount of errors. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It does. I mean, in the meantime, also reading some of the questions that we can cover at the end of this chapter. So please continue.
Thank you. So, Martin, if there's some kind of interesting question popping up.
So it's stated by Margaret Fitzsimone. Francois, it's great to spread the ETIM across 22 countries. It is also interesting to know that there are countries where there is an official ETIM organization promoting and supporting ETIM. There is another map that roughly shows where ETIM is being used, and it is really a global coverage.
Thank you, and I can already see that Jeroen, thank you, Jeroen van der Holst. I did not know that it is already represented in 24 countries. That is the latest information that I found on ETIM International.
24.
That is only making it more interesting, of course, that there are even more countries working with it. But still, thank you for that. It is spreading rapidly, yes. I am aware of it now, and I'm very happy to see that. Nevertheless, yes, I have been working at Zender, not anymore. Nevertheless, I have been working there with ETIM 7.0. I was trying to gather all the data worldwide, let's say, for the most common products that we have been working in. That started in 2017. That means I was working with 7. There were already 6 ETIM versions up front. Since 2020, since the beginning of November, ETIM version 8 is already live. That is, let's say, the life cycle that they are talking about at ETIM International. Life cycle of every time 3 years, and then a new ETIM version will be released. So theoretically, hopefully, they will be able to take care of that. In 2023, that we're then going to work with ETIM 9. The interesting part, at least from my opinion, very interesting part. The ETIM versions that I was talking about, those are the static versions of ETIM. There is also a dynamic version of ETIM. And I know mainly people in the Netherlands have been working with that. And there are good reasons to use dynamic version. There are also very good reasons to use the static version. One of the big differences is actually with static, what I noticed myself, you have also if you want to start with dynamic, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of data involved in the beginning. There's a lot of time and energy involved to set it all up. As soon as you're working with static, you have it all up and running, the whole system. Again, for 3 years, you have this life cycle. And then you even have a transitional time period, time slot of, I don't know, half a year up to 1 year, depending on the companies that you're working with or the country, what they prefer. As soon as you have the whole static version set up, you can work with it for at least 3 years. But again, it's a big bang that you need to keep into consideration. And then up to this moment that ETIM version 9 is then again available, well, there's again a lot of work involved, of course, to get everything up and running from 8 to 9. Dynamic, on the other hand, is constantly working on it. Constantly, you need to look into the system. Is there any change? Is there a new product feature available? Did the product feature maybe change? Is there a value being added, representing more your needs for this specific product that you already classified with an ETIM class? ETIM classes might disappear. I have already seen an example of an HVAC product being covered by, I believe, 3 different ETIM classes. The thing is that when people are looking at it from different perspectives, they might think different things are more important, let's say, to take into consideration. In dynamic, all of a sudden, those 3 ETIM classes might disappear. They might stop being alive, being active, because the next day there is an ETIM class number 4 popping up, covering the 3 ETIM classes that do not exist anymore. The thing is, again, with dynamic, that means a lot of work. Every day, basically every second, there might be changes coming in. And it is possible that those changes are, again, being changed back again, or a different way afterwards. So again, that means that constantly you're working actually on improving your data. The good thing is, as soon as there's a new ETIM version live, you do not have this big bang problem. You simply continue as usual, business as usual. With static, there you have a little bit more challenges, let's say. Not only that, but actually the biggest problem is, well, the biggest challenge, let's put it like that. You cannot decide simply as a manufacturer, hey, I want to work with dynamic or with static. It is depending on the whole chain. We're talking about the data pools. We're talking about wholesalers. We're talking about B2B customers in the end, maybe even B2C customers in how far they can be connected, let's say, to this whole chain. If I decide to work with dynamic, but everybody else is working with static, you will have data inconsistency. You will have mismatches over and over. So then it is better to decide to work with static. The other way around is exactly the same. I decide to work with static. The whole chain is dynamic. I might not be able to cover all the products that I have that I want to sell, that I want to market for. So whether you choose dynamic or static, they're both solid solutions in my opinion, but you need to keep them into account that you need to have conversations done with the whole chain. I mentioned here static or dynamic because I like to use that as a bridge as well to ETIM-MC. But as far as I know, this is the last slide of this chapter.
Yeah, so maybe we can in the meantime cover the questions, because there are several ones. Yes. Regarding the ETIM. Okay, so there is a question from Michał Ledziński, our previous speaker from our previous webinar. I will maybe put this question on hold because it strictly relates the ETIM-MC. So we will park that for the ETIM sub-chapter. Yeah. But let's just answer the question from Regnal Ross. So is this 3-year cycle having some reasons or logic behind? If you are manufacturer, then to maintain all this data for all products is a crazy work.
Yes, it is. But to state it, the easiest way forward, no data means no sales. If everybody is working, all your competitors are working with ETIM, and you're not doing it yourself, you're making it a little bit more challenging for yourself, let's say, to be representative in the market.
Okay, next
and
question.
Not only that, they're also actually pushing for it because they want to standardize the data. They want to have a clearer overview, what kind of products are available, what kind of product features that we need to take into account, and so on. That it is easier to communicate with one another.
Okay, next question from Michał. This one, I think it relates more to ETIM. Do you know anything on the status plans of the CB&L initiative Dutch concept library? If I'm not wrong, ETIM was part of one build environment language project.
I'm not familiar with CBL. I am familiar with UOL, or in Dutch it's called UOB, the Uniform Object Library. They initialized that last year. There was a kickoff, I know that, with some main manufacturers, and they're still working towards a solid solution that everybody can work with it. But we're already going then, in my opinion, in the direction of MC, which is not even covered yet. So maybe later on we can have a discussion there, or look into it, whatever MC might be related.
Okay, so I think that if there are any other questions related to ETIM, we can cover that during the Q&A session. And Francois, I think we can switch to the MC, because otherwise we won't be able to cover all the chapters.
Well, one more thing, because Jeroen van der Holst, he is responsible for Keten Standard in the Netherlands, and it's ETIM Netherlands. He just stated that because of dynamic, and a very fair point, the changes are being made actually because of the market. They wish for that, to have changes in the approach of the ETIM classes or product features. So it is driven by everybody in the whole chain, let's say. That is only what I want to state.
Okay, so maybe last question, because this is quite interesting, by Artur Tomczyk. So how does ETIM stand in relation to COBie, BSDD, and IFC in general? So I think that I can even answer this question. So so the ETIM International has the agreement with the Building Smart, and the ETIM has a mapping within the BSDD. So in case of converting from ETIM to different classification system throughout the BSDD, it's also it's already possible. Not sure which version of ETIM is right now mapped within the BSDD. I'm sure that there was version 7. Not sure whether there is also, yeah, there is a mapping for ETIM 7. Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Jeroen, for supporting us with the exact information.
Yeah, he knows what he's talking about. So
Okay.
thank you for joining it all in general.
Okay, guys, let's park these questions to the Q&A session, because we won't be able to cover the following chapters. Francois, I think that we can switch to ETIM-MC.
Yeah, ETIM-MC. So what was the reason of extending ETIM with ETIM-MC? I cannot mention that often enough. ETIM is data. Data is core business, actually becoming more and more core business. And because of the possibility to standardize and simplify the whole data, let's say, it is not strange at all that they decided as well to go for an ETIM-MC approach, to have a uniform exchange of 3D product data. So the parametric data, that you also simplify that, standardize that, and that, especially in combination with ETIM intelligence already itself. I know at this very moment there are 360 classes. That is also what they started with in the beginning, and nothing much has changed there. But the good thing is, it is covering the main products being manufactured, used, sold worldwide. So probably when you have a look at it, of course, some of your products will not be covered there at all. But they're still working on it. We cannot immediately, or they cannot immediately cover all products one is using worldwide. So again, the main products are being covered there, which is, in my opinion, really a brilliant step forward. I already mentioned it, just to be sure again. So with ETIM-MC, you set up the whole parametric data for a BIM object, and with ETIM, because it is connected in the background, the ETIM class with the ETIM-MC class, you can have this connection that you have the ETIM data even integrated in such a BIM object. ETIM-MC explained. I'm now talking about a convector radiator. The reason is because of the demo later on, we will also use a convector radiator. This here is ETIM itself, specifying the standardized data, giving the information about the whole product, let's say. I already mentioned with alphanumeric, I could not read that before, but here you can see that there are 4 possibilities for material housing. That is steel, plastic, wood, and other. So then you have the possibility to choose one of those 4 EV values, stating that it is either steel, plastic, wood, or other. And again, in the background, you're doing that in French. You can simply read it in French. I do not want to say too much about this whole ETIM class at this very moment, because ETIM-MC is a little bit more challenging in my opinion. You have there a possibility. It is a print screen. I cannot click on it. But now the features are highlighted for this ETIM class. If you go 1, 2, 3, 4 words to the right, you can see linked ETIM modeling classes. As soon as you click that, I skip the print screen in between. There are then 2 possible MC classes. One is released or published, and the other one is still under construction. Here we're talking about MC. Here we're talking about as well the standardization, about product features, about values. There are not always values required or mentioned at all. We have here the nominal diameter 6 times mentioned, with either 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch. I know that in the beginning I said everything is being standardized, simplified. Every product feature is, let's say, unique throughout whole ETIM. And then all of a sudden you see this EF whatever mentioned 6 times for a nominal diameter. Well, in this case for ETIM-MC, it is the combination to make it unique, together with the drawing code. In this case, the EF code together with DN1 is requiring the data for the first nominal diameter, and so on. It is getting more interesting, and again, at least in my opinion, as soon as you go up a little bit to open PDF in new window. I have them here next to each other. That is not the way that it will show on your computer. There you can see the generic drawing. First, when I saw that, I thought it's easy. Having a little bit more of a look at it, I thought, my God, it is pretty complex. Until you see the logic behind it. And that was very interesting, actually, because I do not have such a technical background at all. My background is data migration, data classification, standardization, and so on. But here in this case, I had a closer look at it, and then you see on the left side, and I cannot use a mouse here, stated E. There's this little square shown, and within there, DN mentioned. DN, and then it is too small for me, I believe, within brackets is and also another N mentioned to fill in whether it's a 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, or 8. That is the reference to the data that is required on the ETIM-MC level. So DN1, you can then have a look at the lower left corner of the drawing in the middle, where you have the front view of this radiator. There you see number 1. And a little bit to the left, up 2, 3, on the other side, mirrored 6, 7, and 8. It is possible, well, it's probably impossible that you have all 6 of those connections, but still, here's them being stated, which ones are you using for this specific radiator? Let's say we're using only 1, 2, 3, and 6. That means the 7 and 8, well, don't leave it blank, then say and A for not available. And then you fill in whether 1, 2, 3, 4 are half an inch or 3/4 of an inch. And you do that with the whole spreadsheet, because I'm only showing 9 product features. I believe that there are 50, up to 60 possibilities. But all these drawing codes that are mentioned on ETIM-MC side in the ETIM International Database, they are shown in this generic drawing as well. So you just need to have a little bit of a look at it, and then you will understand how this connection works, but also what kind of data actually is required. What kind of data do you need to fill in? We'll try for stable version. So we need to... Yes. I'm sorry, and in the meantime, sometimes I'm reading the comments a little bit. So that is actually all to it. And I know it is easier said than done. I've been there myself. I have been working with the ETIM-MC approach for a bit, and it is interesting. It is in the end data, but how you handle the data, how you work with that data, and so on, and the strength that it has within to really see the operational. That is in my opinion really a very strong and solid point. So as already mentioned, ETIM, ETIM-MC, they're both connected in a way as long as there's, of course, an ETIM-MC class linked to an ETIM class. But still, we have geometry and metadata. Both define the BIM object. The good thing is the geometry, the parametric data, can then be picked up, generated, created with ETIM-MC data. And the same goes for the information within a BIM object. You can do that with ETIM itself. So I have told you now a little bit about ETIM and ETIM-MC specifically. It might be still rather challenging to really understand what ETIM-MC is all about, because I only showed you the theoretical approach. That is why Adam was so kind to set up a demo to show you, let's say, the differences between the both, but also the power of ETIM-MC. But before we go to Adam, because he will now take over, afterwards I will be back. Any questions at this very moment before we continue with the demo?
So ETIM-MC represents a parametric representation of a product, but ETIM itself, the product being represented in discrete. I am not 100% sure whether I got this question correct from John, but I think that the answer is yes. So the ETIM in general are the metadata, while the ETIM-MC represents the parametric geometry. If that's what John was asking about. Are there any other questions that you would like us to answer? Feel free to answer them now. I think that we still have time for one question. Also, question from my side about relation between ETIM and ISO 23886/23887. So hard for me to answer this question. Maybe Francois, you can take over.
Not sure with those ISO codes actually.
Okay.
That is something new that I'm not familiar with.
So there is a question from Charles. What is the relation between dynamic and static when it comes to ETIM-MC?
How was that question? Sorry, because I
what is the relation between dynamic and static in terms of the ETIM-MC? I think that Jeroen mentioned that MC are static, that as far as I remember.
Well, the thing is, the way that I see it, ETIM-MC is in general dynamic because it might still change.
Sorry, dynamic.
It's not really changed in the meantime. So, in my opinion, although you're working with static ETIM, you might be able to work with ETIM-MC as well in the background, as long as it is connected with one another. But just take into account that it might change in the background.
Okay, so next question from Naurers. Sorry if I pronounce it incorrectly. Do users really need all the properties in an object? What do you think? I think that we will also cover this topic during the demo where we won't provide all the properties, but maybe Francois, you can answer to Naurers right now.
Well, the more data, the better, of course, that you represent the being of your product in general. There are possibilities that you can fill out NA for not available, MV for missing value, and there's one more. I don't remember at this very moment. But the more data, of course, that you can provide, having all the data standardized worldwide and so on, it is wishful, of course, to have all the data objects filled in as much as possible. Because what is the use when there are 50 product features required and only 10 are given?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm afraid that you're missing, let's say, a big part of it, because then also your potential customers might have more difficulties finding your product. Maybe they only want to search for red. When we were talking about radiator, they want to search whether there are red radiators available. But you chose to not fill out this value, so you will never pop up then on those search requests.
Okay, we have also some questions from Ersin Ibram, but I think that we can park this question because it would be explained within the demo section, and I think that we should move forward. If after the demo section you will still have the questions related to that, Ersin, then we can answer that. So Adam, the stage is yours. And please keep up because we got a bit flooded with the questions and we won't be able to provide all the 3 minutes. Okay, Adam, go ahead.
Thank you. I will try to hurry up. What we are going to present, we'll show you two approaches. One on a custom model, custom manufacturer model, which is in a high level of details. It is not connected with ETIM-MC, so the geometry was prepared as very detailed for this manufacturer's product. Of course, in such a situation, we also are able to inject the basic ETIM data. And the second approach is to use the generic content which is compatible with ETIM-MC. As we can see later, as I will show you later, the geometry of the model is based on the technical specification prepared by the ETIM-MC. So this kind of model can be used by any manufacturer whose products are compatible with this ETIM-MC class. The back office BIM streamer is the place where everything starts. The platform as an input take the model of the product and the ETIM data defined in configuration Excel file.
Sorry, Adam, does that have to be Excel or we can take it from other sources as well?
Actually, it can be taken from any source, any external source. It might it can be PIM, Excel, PDM, database, whatever. It can be absolutely everything. We can also combine the data from many sources, like, for example, some kind of data from Excel sheet and the rest from the PIM, if some part is specified in PIM.
So for those of you which are not familiar with the PIM acronym, it stands from Product Information Management, and it represents the system for storing product information across different regions, countries, languages, and so on. Sorry, Adam, please continue.
Okay, so for the custom model, we are going to inject the ETIM data. Thanks to ETIM International and ETIM Poland, we were able to integrate the BIM streamer with ETIM API. Thanks to that, we are able to retrieve the information about the attributes which describe the specified ETIM-MC class, the ETIM class, the values for those attributes, and their translations. With this information, we can validate the data we provide within the Excel sheet if we are missing some kind of ETIM data that represent this class, or if the data we have provided are valid. Later on, the system, using the Revit background, is injecting those data stored in Excel into the Revit file. For the second model, we will do absolutely the same, but we will extend this solution. In Excel, we provide also the ETIM-MC data, which will update the default values which are already stored in the generic model.
And
I think that now we can play the video.
okay.
Yeah. Okay, so at the moment we are showing you the custom model. You can see that there already are some attributes provided. However, during the data injection, we will provide the ETIM data we have stored in our Excel sheet. So let's synchronize that product. We are choosing the radiator family. We are going to validate it with ETIM 7 classification, because our data we provide in Excel was in ETIM 7. We have to specify the attribute which describes the ETIM class, and we provide the information what we are going to do with the ETIM codes. I will pause it. So we have selected the attributes, what means that we are going to translate codes and values to the desired languages. In our example, we are going to translate those attributes into English and German.
So this translation comes from where exactly? Does the manufacturer need to provide them?
No, the translations are taken from the ETIM API. So the only manufacturer has to provide is to define the code of the ETIM attribute and the code of the ETIM value that is valid for the manufacturer's product.
Okay.
Here we can see that we have 23 warnings in validation. Let's check them. Yeah, I will pause it. We can see here that one attribute is invalid because we have provided in Excel the wrong value. We set the code EV154, what means other, the English translations, and the expected values in this example are matte and glossy, and the rest of attributes are missing. So we didn't provide the complete ETIM information to our model. However, it's not a problem. We can still inject this data into the Revit file. Now we will see the result of the process. Yeah, we can see the draws that that were generated automatically, the OBJ file in high details, and we can see the ETIM data provided for this model. In this example, these data were in English, and now we switch to German version, and we can see that the ETIM codes have been translated to German and values as well. Now let's check the generic content. Maybe I will pause it here for a moment. You can see that the attributes we have stored in the master model in the generic content is identical as specified in the ETIM-MC specification. This drawing earlier Francois has already described. So yeah, the geometry of the generic content is based on the ETIM-MC specification, and at the beginning it has some default values. During the data injection, now we are going to replace those default values to the values which represent the product of the manufacturer. Yeah, we can see there's plenty of these attributes. And this is the representation of the values of those attributes in the Excel sheet. The first row defines the product, custom product. So we have here just the ETIM, ETIM attributes and ETIM values. These are these yellow attributes. And for the second product, the row number 3, additionally, we have defined the ETIM-MC products attributes, which are going to change the geometry of the default product.
Adam, if you could pause a bit, because there is a question from John, which I think it's worth answering. So John asked us how we specify the specific instance that is generated if ETIM-MC has all the family parameters. I'm not sure whether I 100% understand the question, but maybe John is referring to types. That's my impression. If you could elaborate a bit on that and answer John to his question.
Mm-hmm. Of course, BIM Streamer is supporting types, lookup tables, and other possible Revit models. And yeah, every type or every type
variant.
or variant, yeah, in lookup table is also a row in the CSV file. Every product is represented by one row in our Excel sheet. So every product has its attributes and values representation. And in such cases, we are injecting the values of the attributes for all of the variants. So in case we have generic content which has types or is based on lookup tables, we can dynamically update those models by providing only the correct number of types. So for example, if there should be 3 types with some kind of geometry, we can inject the valid data.
Okay, so in general, within a single BIM file, I'm able to have several product variants. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Please continue.
Okay, so now we are going to take the same validation because for the second product we use the same ETIM data. So we will have the same number of warnings. Yeah, let's inject the data, and soon we will check how it look like. Now we can see that all the images and OBJ has been generated for the generic content. We can see that the level of details is much simpler. However, we still have injected the ETIM data in dedicated languages. And additionally, here we have section ETIM-MC, which contains the attributes and values for the ETIM-MC specification. And these attributes have been injected into the Revit file, which updates the geometry to the desired by the manufacturer for this product. Here we can see the German translations, and soon we will download the generated Revit models, and we will compare the attributes with the master model. Yes, this is the master model with the values, and let's download. Yeah, and now we can compare it, and we can see that almost all the attributes has been changed. So, for example, BV has 100, and in master model it was 160. D 122, and in master model it was 200. And every single attribute has been updated according to the value that we have provided in the Excel sheet. And further, yeah, we can show the injected ETIM data. We can see that they are not provided in the master model. And now let's download the second one, and we will be able to check that for the second version, the ETIM data has been injected in different language.
So in the meantime, maybe we can answer John's questions. Can other attributes other than geometry be updated by the Excel file? For example, if the size affects the heating capacity or of the radiator, can the Excel file drive the attribute?
Yes, we can inject any kind of attribute during the injection. So it doesn't have to be the same because the ETIM data we have injected is strictly technical information, and ETIM-MC is the geometry information. But it might be any kind of information that we can inject. We can use different classification and inject different classification values. We can inject specific manufacturer attributes and values. So yeah, you can imagine that you can inject there almost everything.
Adam, one question from my side, because I noticed that this injection of the data takes place on the server. So does that mean that if I'm a planner and I would like to use your content, which was automatically generated either by injecting the data into the static model or the one that is based on the generic MC compliant one, does that mean that me as an architect, I'm not forced to install any plugins or no add-ons?
Yes, designers and architects doesn't have to install anything. This what we have presented, it was just the back office part, which manufacturer uses to make the injection and validation of the created files. However, later on, they are published, and they can be published anywhere. It might be the manufacturer website, it might be the another BIM files providers. It can be any web page. So yeah.
What about the Revit plugin? Can I also have it within the Revit plugin if I would like to?
Yes, it's not a problem. Manufacturer can provide, for example, the Revit plugin, web page, mobile application, and all of the it's treated as the channel, right? So we are publish the data to some kind of channel, and all of the applications can read those data from anywhere.
Okay, one question from Kevin here. Maybe I will even be able to answer it. Where does the BIM geometry comes from? Is it automatically generated from ETIM properties and values? How many classes are are available in your solution? So maybe a quick intro to what the BIM Streamer actually is. The BIM Streamer is actually a software which deals with the BIM content. It's a BIM content management software. And when it comes to the geometry actually comes from the generic content which might be predefined. And in terms of who prepares the generic content, we're already in partnerships with our partner organization that actually prepares the BIM content. One of them actually prepares the content for this session, and they actually offer the generic content. Some of them are also MC compliant, so it's up to the manufacturer which content they require. They can just use the generic one which is offered by our content service provider partners. So not sure whether this is the answer to Kevin's question, but I hope it is. The other one, how many people are dedicated to the creation maintenance of the data? It is clear there is an advantage to having such data, but the startup and maintenance must have been very challenging. I think that Michał Ledziński could tell a bit more about that. He is also on the audience on today's webinar. Maybe also Francois could give more line, because working with Zender probably and data management was also quite challenging task, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it is a challenging task. It is a time-consuming task, but the way that I see it is worth it, at least.
Okay, so in that, from this moment, I would like to invite you, because some of you has already asked about the support for different file formats. That's why I would like to invite you for the next webinar session that took place at the beginning of May, where together with Rafał Mus from AliAxis, a head of BIM at AliAxis, and Grzegorz Wilk, an architect and ArchiCAD expert, which is also a BIM Streamer ArchiCAD specialist, will tell you about the strategies of preparing the content for both Revit and ArchiCAD. And believe it or not, there are several strategies that you can work with, and it's not black and white which strategy is the best for your case, for your product portfolio, for the way you have your data orchestrated, for the way you have your content, BIM content, content orchestrated. So we will cover several different strategies. We will also explain which strategies are best for which case, and which actually might be best fit for you. But right now, I think that we can go back to a wrap up of Francois. So, Francois, is ETIM-MC actually a game changer when it comes to BIM?
Well, that is a really good question. In my opinion, it can be. In my opinion, it can be, because again, data is being more and more of the core business, let's say, for everybody. No data means no sales. With ETIM-MC, you have, no, let me put it like this. I had a lot of conversations with architects, planners, engineers, and so on. What they actually prefer is a workable object. And it doesn't matter basically what it looks like. Does it look like a shoebox? Does it really look like the physical representation of this radiator that we were talking about? In the end, they say it needs to be as small as possible. Because when you're working with Revit and you're working on enormous projects that take 1 year, 1.5 years, and so on, the data used in there, it is so enormous that they cannot even really work with the data anymore. So the smaller the file size is, the better, the easier it is for everybody to work with it. what we also need to take into consideration, of course, BIM. When we're talking about BIM, and that is, I'm also afraid what people sometimes might misunderstand, or at least based on my experience, that is what I got as a feedback. BIM is not a 3D object. BIM is a methodology. A BIM object, it's 3D object with all the intelligence in there, is only a part of supporting this whole methodology. So when we're looking at the whole life cycle of a building, in the beginning, it is necessary to have all those 3D objects, but they need to be able to work with it. They need to share that with everybody who's working with it, with the installers for the water piping, for the radiator heating, for whatever kind of thing that you can think of, for the electronics that need to be included in the whole planning. The idea actually of BIM is that everybody's sitting together in one room, either virtually or physically, of course, but with COVID-19 is a bit challenging. But that is actually the idea, that they immediately discuss those kind of topics and then find direct solution, not wait for the first brick to be put on the ground and then start actually building the building. And then they realize, okay, there are problems. We need to figure out how to circumvent that. Those workarounds cost extra time, extra money. With BIM, you can solve that all up front. But as far as I am aware, is also that they want to go more and more into this direction of anonymizing objects, BIM objects. So the more intelligence you have in those BIM objects, the better you can sell your products, of course. It is not that you must have your logo on there very big, because we will shift into a direction that it will be less and less the case. Architects, planners need to go for the best working solutions for this whole digital planning, what they're working on. So if you have a good connection with whatever manufacturer and so on, that you get an extra discount, this will be then less and less the case. Actually, that is what they're working on. So if you have very well data for your objects, they might be more likely to choose your BIM objects to integrate in the planning, in the 3D planning. And then only later on, when they all agree, this is the approach, this is the building that we want to go for, then they say, now I want to see my wish list, my shopping list. And only then you find out what the manufacturers actually are. But the next step will be, then we already told about the ETIM-MC approach, the simplified versions or the generic BIM object that everybody's working with. According to the BIM methodology, more and more is going to happen. Building a hospital, in this case, will take what? 1 year, maybe 2 years, depending on how big it is. But then the operational part, that is consuming much more time. 50 years, 100 years. And what if you all have those digitally represented? You want to do tests. What happens as soon as there is a fire or whatever, that you can find out digitally with your virtual reality glasses on or your augmented reality glasses on. How does it work? There's maintenance needed for some kind of device. You don't necessarily need somebody from the outside anymore, because you can already find the digital representation and you can figure out, how does it work? What do I need to open? What do I need to replace? Or what screw do I need to untie or whatever? Then I am afraid that those generic models are not sufficient. So then we're getting back again to the highly qualitative visualized BIM objects, of course, that we need. So it will be, in a way, a cooperation between the two. So it is actually depending on what part of the process you're in this whole BIM methodology. So is it a BIM game changer? In my opinion, it definitely is. There's still a little bit of work to do, but I am definitely very sure of the fact that it will be a BIM game changer. And I hope really that also with this short webinar, because only 1 hour to talk about it is not enough, I can talk weeks about it. It is a brilliant topic, but the work involved there is scary. But as long as you have that in place, you are in charge. So one day it will come that you need to have all your data in place. Then why not immediately start with it? I like to conclude the webinar with these last words. Thank you very much for your attention. Maybe there are some other questions that might pop up. I noticed that we are already 4 minutes late. Terribly sorry about that. But if there are any questions, burning questions, let me know. And otherwise, how can we do that? Maybe you can always reach out to me via LinkedIn or whatever. Well, I can see that people stayed at least. Thank you, and thank you, very informative. Well,
Perfect.
thank you as well for mentioning that. Martin?
Yeah, I think that at the very end we would like to give a special credits to people that help us in preparing the webinars. That's why I would like to give a special thanks to ETIM and International and ETIM Poland, especially to Mark Habets and Tomasz Boroc for giving us the access to the ETIM API, thanks to which we will manage to prepare the demo, and also to BIM Drone and Piotr Wolny in particular for preparing us a generic content. So thank you very much for the participation. Apology for slight 6 minutes delay, but I hope that it was worth for you to joining. So wish you all the best, and I hope that we will see you at the very next webinar, which covers the topic of Archicad and Revit content preparation. I'm just adding you one more time the registration button, so you could actually check it out and register. Thank you very much, and hope to stay tuned and see you on the next webinar.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.